And welcome to a Wednesday afternoon here on Kobold Press for another Kobold Chats, where we chat all thing Kobold Press. So here we are, chatting more Kobold Press, if you can believe that. And the hot to trot topic for Kobold Press right now is our current Kickstarter campaign builder, cities and towns. And I am joined by Brian. Brian is one of the illustrious writers on this project. We've had them week by week, and I cannot wait to see what you have brought to this book, because we get to add it to our city today, which is the exciting end part of this. So stick around for a little chat, help. And yes, we are here to spill some beans. So before we can spill the beans that Brian has written, we actually have to start by letting Brian introduce himself. Brian, tell everybody who you are, where they could maybe find you for whatever it is you do.
I'm Brian Suskind. I'm one of the, elder designers at Kobold Press. Yes. I've been here since the beginning of time, it seems like. I've done work, I think, on just about every project we've done. You could find me often on the Kobold Press Midgard Discord. I'm there answering questions, as well as the Facebook. But I'm Brian Suskind on Instagram and Twitter. And let me just put it out that if you've ever have any questions about Kobold Press or Midgard, just hit us up on Discord. All of us designers are hanging out. It's almost like we're there just to answer your questions.
Oops.
That's actually not the case, but we do answer your questions.
There's a link to that Discord.
Right down there. Or actually it would be that way. Depending which way your screen is.
Yes, true. It's true. And I guess if you're on mobile, it's directly below us.
Yeah. So in some direction,
there's a floating
somewhere.
Blue link. Click on it. It'll take you to the Kobold
There
Discord.
It is.
Very nice. Well, Brian, we've had you on a few times. You came by for the 15th anniversary celebration. We've had you on for a few different Kickstarter projects over the last, year, 2 years. But this one I think is really unique.
Yeah, it is.
It's really unique. As somebody that knows the plethora of the Kobold Press, library, this one I feel like is a really unique ad.
Yeah, I mean, usually a lot of our stuff is either, something very Midgard, like Margrave or something, or sometimes we do stuff, monsters or like the Vault of Magic, which was amazing. But it's almost, to me, it was almost like we took some of our design guides and we went, here's how we'd apply it. And it's just a great, it harkens back, for me, at least, back to like the old second edition stuff, where it's like the old, castle builder design book.
Right.
And settlement design. And that was the great thing. Like when it was announced to us designers, we all went, oh, I want to work on it. Please let me work on it. And there was a lot of begging. There was a lot of begging. And we're not too proud to beg, let's be honest.
Well, when you're a really great writer and you get inspired by something, beg away. But yeah, this one I think too is super duper unique, and it's interesting. I haven't actually thought about it that way, but it is kind of like the old builders in a certain way, and it's kind of like peeling back just one more layer to how Kobold Press looks at building the overall set of products that you actually see in our library, which I think is a really interesting look at this book too, that it's kind of like, it's not just like, oh, here's how to do it. Here's an essay, right? Or what I like to call the guides are like panels in books, right? They're like a little panel. This is actually like practical charts, numbers, like what does it look like to take this religion thing and put it into a table or into a place or into a societal governmental structure. And so that's something that I don't think we often get either, not just from us, but in general for GMs in terms of a really usable tool,
It's true. Because I mean, sometimes there's a lot of people that can hear a lecture about, setting design and they'll just run with it. But then, some of people, hear the lecture and they go, yes, I understand that on a certain level, but being able to apply it, then you kind of look at the blank page and go, I'm not sure what to do now.
Yeah.
And
almost ambiguous. It's like too big of an idea in some way. Yeah, to actually
you don't know how to
find
start.
Application. Yeah. It's like staring at a white canvas.
Right. Where do you begin?
Yeah. Interesting. So this really does break down here's what starting looks like. It's actually funny. We had Sebastian on last week and we talked about taxes, which I never thought I'd be excited about taxes for any reason, but I am.
He was very excited.
I know. And so were we, and we talked about taxes and figured out how to work it into our city. But for the finale of the Great Oozescape, which we just closed out here on the channel, the oozes had banded together with all the rest of the monsters from the Wizard's Tower to start a union. And they couldn't figure out how to handle their union dues. And in the middle of the game, I was like, wait a second. I have a resource for this. And so I pulled up Brian's stuff. I couldn't show it to everybody, but we did use it to actually set the regulation for how tithes are done, which is funny because it basically ended up being that they were going to hawk all of the wizard stuff from the tower equally. And then everybody had to give a portion of it back, which I thought was hysterical. But that being said, it was a really great, idea place for us to get started on a conversation that I don't think it comes up very often, or maybe it does come up often and we don't have a solution for it, and it falls into the GM's lap to just what I call the improv hole. You start digging the improv hole until it makes the shape you're looking for, until it comes into some kind of art. But yeah, so I think that's a really great way to look at this book, and I don't think a perspective that we've had yet on how exciting it is to add this to the Kobold Press Library. So now,
good.
Oh no, by all means, please.
Oh no, I was also going to say that a lot of products will give you here's a great adventure or here's a great setting aspect that it's really layered and really rich, and then the players are like, but now we're going to go to town. And you're like, well, there's a tavern,
right?
And there's a street, and you have it's you're going off the top of your head.
Yeah.
And, you have nothing. And I think this book is really going to let you put the layers in and make it feel like a real place.
Yeah, I actually, people see, I know that I am stoked, and people in chat seem most excited about the character sheet, the city character sheet, which I think is just so cool. I already my Leslie Knope tendons are going at it. I'm like, oh, I want a binder, right? All my world,
flip it
and
over,
with all my city sheets in it, and then I can just go from city to city, and I'll put them in little sleeves, and then I can write on them. I've already got this whole plan for my city sheets, and so I think about that just in practicality too, how many notebooks of cities and towns and crap have we either written as GMs or not written or done on the spot?
And then forgotten about almost immediately.
Right, immediately. It's oh, right, good. Okay, I'm glad they passed through that town, and didn't want to help the tavern owner or whatever. Because I think you do get to that point, and one of the things I have actually been enjoying in building this city with chat over the last few weeks is that the city has actually been it's been so easy, and it already has so much richness and lore to what this place is and why it is the way it is, that I'm just already super duper impressed. So why don't you tell everybody what have you added to the book?
Well, I had two main sections. One of them was NPCs and Monsters, just sort of the named people in town. Well, not named. Not named as like Fred, but more like rich merchant. Kind of the big movers
the
and
important
shakers.
People. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of NPCs in the book that people have said, well, this is insert name here, specific guy. But I was more in charge of handling sort of the if you wanted to, and this was interesting because we realized that we didn't have a king. We had a noble from core, and occasionally we've had king, whatever his name is, or queen, whatever her name is. But we had never had a generic emperor or king, and you usually use noble, but it's like a CR 1/4, and it's
that's
okay,
not quite,
maybe they had more training.
Yeah.
Maybe they've been doing this for a while. And so that was fun to write. So it's I had those, and I also had city-based monsters.
Oh, interesting. Something that there is never enough of.
Right. And so I really delved into a lot of sort of urban legend.
Oh, okay. Urban legend.
See? Well, I mean, and it's true. I actually, to start off, I really Googled city-based urban legends to see, just to see.
Really?
Because I grew up in New York City, so the first thought that popped into my head was sewer alligators. Because that's sort of the running gag of what monsters live in the city. Oh, there's alligators in the sewers.
Right. Or there's that Chicago under Chicago
Right.
Right. There's like a city under under the city. Yeah, which is
Yeah,
partially
chuds
true and partially not.
and if you're old enough to remember chuds from from back in the day, which is a very interesting movie. So I thought of those, and I ended up coming up with things like the sewer blob. It's sort of a sewer ooze that just like comes up out of the sewer in this big wave. It sort of looks like in my head, I guess I was picturing that moment in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when he's left that plant on Earth and it kind of explodes into that big blob. That's what I thought.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I think when the sewer part makes me think more what's her name from she's the blob lady from what's that show?
From with the robot guy and
yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. What is that show called? I can't believe I forgot. I love that show.
It's a DC show. It was on the CW. I just watched it's on HBO Max. It's called
on HBO.
God, I read this comic book as a child, which really dates me there. Don't say that. I'll think of it in a second.
Yeah, it has anyway, so yeah, it'll come to us in random. Yeah. But yeah, that I picture it the same way, kind of like it absorbs everything and it probably comes out of the ground and not Harley Quinn, it was the Doom Patrol.
Hey, there it is. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, don't break the DM. You made sure not to break our minds today. Yes, Doom Patrol. Yeah, I just is like kind of disgusting. I imagine that there's going to be some kind of fleshy DNA bit because it's sewage, It's
just glorb. Yeah.
Yep. So you're basically, what you're telling me is there's a huge portion of this where you've put in quick and easy stat blocks, which we never have enough of both we'll call them VIP NPCs,
That's right.
right, for the town, from king to, like you were saying, like merchant and noble,
down to pauper and one of the things that I tried to do, like we had like the cell sword, and then it was actually took a while to come up with a name for a mage version of that. We went through a bunch of different sort of thoughts on like, well, what do you call someone who's a sellsword but is a mage? And we finally went with Spellhawk.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and there was like, I think it was like a 5 or 10 page like chat thread on our private Discord where we're like, well, we're all throwing names out and be like, what would that be like? And finally, Spellhawk became the one that we decided to use.
I like that.
Yeah. But the thing I really tried to do with the NPCs was, at least I know in my own games, like if I'm in a town and you could always come up with use a random stat block. But it's like, I'll run across like the players will be like, I want a merchant. And you say, okay, here's this guy. They're like, no, I want to go to a better merchant. Now, usually it's the same stat block. And you're like, well, how do you make it better than that? Or how do you make one that's like I need a thief. Okay, here's this, low-level thief. Well, no, I need like a really good thief. You're like,
yeah, so, I didn't think about like,
right. How do you level that up on the fly?
Yeah, that's really brilliant, actually, to think about. Like, sometimes your players are picky, right? Or they may be like, oh, we're only going to do one that's doing business with a guild. And you're like,
Or given that they're players, NPCs, the first guy died because they didn't keep him alive. And they're like, well, let's get a replacement, but a better one.
But a better replacement. You're like, that was the only one I had. Y'all killed them.
Right. And so what I thought was like, how I designed a system that you could apply bonuses on the fly using the same sort of generic stat block. Like you could take the same base stat block for a performer. And this might be somebody who's like on the corner juggling balls or whatever. And then you're like, no, I'm now from there. That's like apprentice level. But now you could go senior master. That's the person in the opera house performing in front of kings. And they have a better bonus. Now, to be honest, sometimes you don't need stat blocks for these people because it doesn't come up. But when it does, it's really nice to have that in your toolkit.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I imagine actually there are more times in my life where I actually needed that tool than I could probably think of on the spot right now, Absolutely. That's pretty handy. So you're going to basically get starter, we'll call them starter stat blocks for these NPCs and the creatures. And then you would be able to take these NPCs and level them up in their own way, like make them better, as you said.
It's basically a bonus to all of their die rolls. And it's a sort of depending on how skilled they are. And it's not it's really meant to be something to use on the fly. It's not meant to be like, here's the whole stat block for battle.
Right.
But even with like a sellsword, you could apply this bonus if it happens to be someone who's really good at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that allows people more flexibility when they're gaming.
Right. And so this is actually really cool. So I'm like, I get the sneak peek of the document. So sorry, I'm like scrolling through and looking. So there are so many stat blocks here. So first off, this is not slim pickings, everybody. Okay, so just let me put that out there. And some really interesting ones too that like you don't think about till your players think about them.
That's usually the ones when you really need it.
When you really need it the most, like a foot pad, which is not necessarily a thief, but foot pads have a loose understanding of personal property and seem to enjoy acquiring the belongings of others. So it's like, yeah, it's a thief, but it's a different kind of thief.
It's just sort of a low level guy who might be picking somebody's pocket.
Yeah, or like the kid who needs to go get something from the
right.
police officer, or distract him. I love that. Monarchs, those kinds of things we talked about. But also, every time I bring a performer of any kind into a game, my players attach themselves to the artist, and they become one of the forever NPCs where, like, now they're being drug along because I like having them there. And I never plan stats for them. I'm lucky to even put out, like, 4 lyrics of what they might actually be saying. You know what I mean? So, another great one that I'm like, oh my god, how many times have I needed that? Love this. Here's the Spellhawk. Oh, that's cool. Okay, I don't want to spoil that one. I can't spoil everything. Everybody, I can't spoil everything.
And what I really try to do with a lot of these sort of generic city-based stat blocks is give them each an ability that I thought could be useful, that I could see coming up in a game. Because a lot of times you'll get a sort of a, not a commoner, but just a citizen stat block, and they have some ability that you're like, well, that will never happen in my game.
Right.
So I try to really think of things that like would happen.
Would actually happen. Well, so basically you've done the legwork for us, and clearly many years of being a GM that has been put in this position.
That helps.
To like think ahead and say, okay, here are the patterns that tend to happen at a table when you have a GM, or when you have what I call shenanigan players. When you have shenanigan players,
that's like all players,
right? They're all exactly all shenanigan players, and they're looking for shenanigans or and you can't plan for that all the time. No. And this really helps you in that moment where it's like, no matter how much homework I did, no matter what encounters I put together, sometimes your players are just going to surprise you. And this is kind of like it's a fall net that really helps you in that like time of and for you as a GM to look like super ready to super
I was obviously prepared for this question.
Exactly. They are a blank,
that's right.
Yeah, choice. I love that. All right, so you did this great section on NPCs and city beasts. What about the other section? You said you wrote 2 sections for the book.
Yes. My other section was specifically on henchmen and hirelings.
Ooh.
Which, to be honest, has sort of faded out of usefulness in the more recent editions. It used to be, like, even Gary Gygax talked about it in the original DMG, and he said, like, these are critical to high-level gameplay.
Yeah.
Because the idea back then was at a certain point, your character would have a stronghold, and it would be filled with people who would take care of it while you were off fighting dragons and saving kingdoms. Someone had to protect all your stuff, and that's what hirelings were for. And so he thought they were very important. But as the game editions have sort of progressed, it became leadership, and then it also is, to be honest, is somewhat unwieldy at the table to have you trailing along with 8 or 9 people following behind you, because that's like, well, it's a lot of minis. But they still have a place. I mean, they are still an important thing. But the trick these days seems to be is figuring out who they are before your players do. Because I don't know about your games, but a lot of, like, I think it's like just what you were saying with the performers, you threw out an NPC thinking, no, they'll just buy this flask from this guy.
Right. They're just going to get the poem and move on.
And all of a sudden they're like, no, you should come with us. And you're like, oh, now I need like a name and I need like a personality for this guy.
Right. I got to know something about him, which what I had planned was bard, liar, 4 lines of verse,
Right. Yeah. You're like, the guy's lucky if he has a name.
Right.
You know? Like, this is your red shirt from Star Trek. This is not somebody who's supposed to survive more than 2 minutes.
Oh, so okay. So you're saying that this hireling henchman system allows you to kind of move a bard with no name,
exactly,
into bard with more of a story or a place in the world.
Yeah. So I sort of went at it from a couple different angles. I really thought about loyalty, and so how loyal is the henchman to the party? Because let's face it, a lot of parties tend to be a bunch of murder hobos who have a hard time keeping NPCs alive.
Or they don't come through on their money.
Right. Yeah, they don't want to pay anybody.
They don't want to pay,
And so I basically created a scale that had sort of positive adjustments and, negative ones. So like, you pay the person on time is a little bit more positive than refusing to pay them. Or, they keep getting wounded, and then, so how that scale figures out. And it's not like the henchman's up and going to leave the party in the middle of the dungeon, because that would be suicide. But it's really like they'll wait till they get to someplace safe and be like, oh, well, okay, bye.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I love this. And actually, this is a really cool system as well for unexpected story plots, which I think sometimes are really helpful as a GM, to tie like extra pieces of things together. Or you're like, man, if only the antagonist knew this information. Well, if you have a hireling who's not being paid or skimmed of money or being injured on the regular, it's an easy way for you as a GM to have like a new red string on your storyboard, to tie things together for your players. And that's actually a really cool unexpected mechanic kind of that comes out of it.
It's true, because it sure would be too bad if the big bad guy suddenly started working with your henchman to poison your food.
Or paid your henchman, which you didn't pay him, and then some. I think that's really neat. And honestly, this stacks in kind of interesting ways alongside some of what Sebastian brought to the table with the taxes, right? We were joking, but like, what does it actually look like for your players to like go earn all this money, but maybe there's like a treasure tax or a luxury tax in town. So they come into this town where they bought a house, or maybe it's where they're squatting, and now they're paying out 30% of everything they brought back from the dungeon, and now they don't have the money to pay the hireling.
Or they need to resurrect the paladin again, and need 26,500 gold, and you're like, well, I guess we didn't need that artifact.
Yeah, exactly. So that's I think there's also really fun things that the mechanics of this book at large are kind of doing and building and playing off one another in a really interesting way. That's almost, oftentimes a GM has to bring all the ideas to the table, has to be the inspiring one that gets everybody like going. This book actually kind of inspires me as a GM. It's like your helping tool. And I think that's really cool. It makes you go, oh, something's got my back.
Exactly.
So very, very cool. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about these henchmen and these hirelings. So you're saying there's a way to kind of like, define them better, to add more to them. What are some of the things that you can do to define them better?
Well, I mean, they need to feel in a game. They should feel real. I mean, like, first of all, they're definitely going to have a role. Like, who are they? Like, why did you hire this guy? And so I have a list broken up by, or various tables broken down by occupation. And then
very thorough, very cool, everybody. Just so you know.
So it's things like, crafters or criminals or government officials. And with each type of job, I include what skills or tools that person would use, and then what NPC stat block you could use for it. Like, I'll throw it out like kind of randomly, like if you had like a butler. Now, butler might have insight and persuasion as their main skills, and you could use a commoner, or you could use a guard if you want to use one of the core stat blocks. For a chef, it might be, of course, going to be cook's utensils or an herbalism kit. And you might use an artist or a crafter, which are two of the stat blocks included in the book.
Right. Yep. And I'm looking at this one like, I like this herbalist, right? Which a druid build is like a total easy, like grab the quick stat,
Sure.
Very cool. Yeah, there's a lot of these. Like this is what I'm staring at least 3-4 pages
Mhm.
of these kind of profession tables to help you very quickly, like, and honestly, if I know it's a bard, I'll be able to just quick search. Right? Like
Sure.
the table is set up so you can almost like backwards use it or forwards use it, like you were talking about, which I think is really cool too, because like maybe if I know that I want him to be a bard, I don't know what kind of hireling he is.
Right.
I could actually go and search the bard option and say, oh, well, maybe he's a blank instead, which I think is also a really neat way that this table functions, like back and forth, which is really cool.
And then once you kind of know what your hireling does, you still have to make him real at the table, because he's still going to be, for a lot of people, especially if the players come out of the blue with this, you're still going to be like, I know nothing about this guy or this
Right.
woman, whoever it is. And then, so I really went into a detail on sort of character and behavior, because, the way I thought of the way to make a character, or especially an NPC, feel real, at least for my own games, there's sort of 3 things. You want personality, mannerisms, and then agenda. And if you can have one of each, then somebody sort of feels real.
Yeah.
They don't feel any more like a paper cutout.
Yeah, I think that's actually really great. One of the questions I get a lot on panels, like GMing panels, is like, how do you manage all the characters that you end up creating? Because like I love NPCs. This section's about to become one of my favorite things that I use on a regular basis, because I love NPCs in my games. It's how I feel most connected to my players. Is when I'm talking to them through another person, and so I use them a lot. But the big question always is like, how do you keep track of them? How do you make them unique? How do you do that?
Yeah.
And I think this is actually a really clear and smart way to break down a quick NPC, of making them unique, right? Somebody with a like personality, mannerisms, agenda. Like that's the core of like an easy NPC, very.
And
cool.
you've seen these, and we've seen some like personality traits sometimes in a lot of other books. But my problem with them has always been, they'll say things like, "This guy's angry." But that doesn't really tell you anything.
Nope.
Like,
why is he angry?
So for me, and this is sort of the theory that I went on with this, is like, especially for personality traits should always be at least 2 words. Because one word is it's can be descriptive, but it's usually too vague.
Right.
So if you have 2 words at a minimum, you might be angrily aggressive.
Right.
That tells you.
But you could be also like silently angry, which is
Right.
a whole different angry.
And those are 2 completely different people. And the minute you go with 2 words, suddenly, like when you said silently angry, a whole thought of a character popped into my head. And so that's,
Wow. Okay, very cool. Okay, so we've got a table of double words, basically, to define these personalities. And y'all, they're really, really great. Like, I love superstitiously gullible.
Right.
I want to play that character. Like, I love that. That's a great pairing. Cruelly petty. Ooh, like just in it, like petty just to be cruel.
I also like bluntly parental.
Yes, bluntly parental. Like the hostile sticky notes that say "take your shoes off at the door."
Yeah.
Like
you're gonna swing your sword like that, are you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, your sister could do it better.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, this is really cool. So there's basically a D10 here to roll these personalities, and then there's another D10 to roll for your mannerisms and those agendas as well.
And for the mannerisms, it usually tends to be, for me, one little thing that the NPC does and it's preferably one that the GM's going to remember that they do, because let's face it, players are paying attention to a lot of things, and they don't have a lot of attention span to spend on, let's say, the NPC that you just made. So, but doing one little thing, especially at the game table, like, always rubs their nose, or, is like, has an irrational fear of muffins,
bad allergies,
whatever it is. Yeah, whatever it is, that will stick in their head. And they may forget the NPC's name, but they're like, we need to go talk to that guy who's allergic to muffins. They'll remember that for some reason, but they won't remember his name.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Some of the mannerisms here. Tugs on ear, braid or mustache. Love that. Very thick accent. I love that it doesn't matter then at that point, what kind of accent? Like,
no,
it's thick. It doesn't matter at all.
Annoyingly overeager was one of my favorite ones because I just imagine like, just let's go do the thing. Like, okay, calm down.
Just like, wait a second, you're staying here. Right. I love is always eating. We all know that person.
Yep.
That no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, they are always eating something. I love that. Quotes religious text. We also know that person. These are fantastic mannerisms. And also, I think they're really inspiring because, this is a D10 table, but as I think you begin to use this tool, right?
You
more
just write
and more.
write down in like more and more.
More in, or you're going to start finding that as you build NPCs, you start doing the 3-step process, right? Which is...
I like the one in chat. Let's do some crime. Always wants to do some crime. That would be a great one.
Always wants to do some crime. Add it to the table. Make it a D12. I love that. And I think again, it's almost like a little bit of a spark for GMs. It's an inspiring spark that says, okay, here's how to start, as we mentioned, doing this thing, and then you can build out from there and go hog wild and have more interesting NPCs ongoing because now you're using this lovely system that helps you lay them out in a rich way.
Now, if you only had those two things, personality and a mannerism, that would be perfect for like somebody who wasn't hanging out with you. Like if that's the guy you meet in the tavern and he's the bartender, and they'll remember that guy. But if a hireling is technically going with the party,
yes, right.
For that you need one more sort of thing, and that's an agenda, because everybody in life wants something or they have some goal that they want to do, and that's where agenda comes in. And it may never happen in the game. But it can, and an NPC to feel real needs to have something that they're doing. Maybe they're only in it for the money. Maybe they want to be an adventurer. But having that in the back of your head, as the game master, you can add it to certain situations when like they're talking to the PCs, and it makes them feel real, like a real person.
Right, because they have something that's driving them, right? That's what the agenda does, is it drives their actions, the way that they interact with the world and the choices that they make inevitably, right? Because if you want something, you're not going to make choices against the thing you want unless for some reason there's something you want more.
Or your life's in danger. And let's be honest, GMs aren't doing this out of like kindness.
Right.
We're doing this with the hope that we're going to set up some sort of moral question.
Yes.
Like where the PCs, we want the PCs to care about these people so we can put them in danger. That's really what we're doing.
Like let's just look at, number 2 on this list is hiding from old enemies.
Oh, yes.
What does that mean is going to inevitably happen? The enemies will arrive, right? To take this, potentially take this NPC away. I love that. More, what can be a point of conflict or climax for the players, especially because if this is not just your bar tavern NPC, right, that you're just leaving behind, and they don't need an agenda because his agenda is to get up every day and run his tavern and make as much money as possible, right? But if you're doing a hireling agenda and you have this person that's coming along with the crew, these agendas are what make them dive a little deeper, what make them work a little closer with the party, and potentially, the party sometimes takes on NPCs that they'd give everything for.
Yeah,
that always
that's the best.
Yeah, those are the best ones because you've got them hooked. But that happens,
Yeah. Oh, it does. And, and we should say that, like, when we say hirelings and NPCs, sometimes these can be people like your Nodwick. This is the guy carrying all your loot. But it could also be somebody you've put on retainer to work your bar that you've bought and you keep coming back to. So it doesn't have to be with you all the time. But
that's another great thing I hadn't even thought about, right? Is like, we talked about a few weeks back about this book is also great, and specifically with the character sheet. Players sometimes get to a point where they have a lot of money or a lot of power. What if you want to start your own town?
Right.
Like, what if they want to start their own town? You're going to need to have your taxes and all of these things structured in place.
Guards, mayors.
This is a great system for building out those VIP NPCs and potentially having the hireling that, like, make sure things are exactly the way you want them, or the tavern that you bought. Yeah.
Your butler, your seneschal, whatever it is. And then as a GM, you can then put all those people in horrible, horrible danger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that out loud? Oh, that was out loud. I'm sorry. I said that. That's
there's just so many uses for it, really, when you think about how many NPCs you're constantly like coming up with, making up, and that become somehow ingrained in your story. And the amount of work you do to keep it that way or to not keep it that way.
Right.
This seems almost like taking some of that kind of off the table, which is really nice, or like helping support that as you kind of do it. Little support system.
The pessimistic GM side of me goes, we'll spend a lot of time coming up with NPCs, and those are the ones that the players completely ignore.
Yeah, they're not ever gonna like or love. See, this is why I don't make them up until they actually. I'm like, there's a bard playing music, and then they're like, well, now I want to know more about the bard. I'm like, okay, now I'll make up more about the bard.
Because it's never the one that you want them to talk to. It's always like the guy you mentioned in passing. Yeah. That's the person that they're like, we gotta go talk to her, and you're like, I have nothing prepared for that person.
Yeah, and even we've built out guilds. The guilds are gonna need important people, and I bet every guild has a hireling.
Exactly. Well, they have members, they have runners. Right. I mean, a town, to feel real, there's people who live there, and some people have jobs and some people don't. Yep. And the people that the NPCs or PCs want things. They want people to build them things. They want to own things, or they want to, they want people to perform for them, or even to get them ready to go meet the king. Yep. Like, I need somebody to make me clothes. The system that we designed here, it's like just roll 3 D10s, boom, here's a character that feels real.
Right. Yeah. And that fast, and they have personality, and then they get them what they need, and maybe they stay, maybe they don't. But man, that's it's a really it almost feels so necessary. Like, why haven't we done this before?
Yeah, I think it's
I'm sure
a lot of it.
Have, but in certain ways. But I love the way this is laid out. It's almost to a level of such simplicity that it becomes an actual like usable tool. It's like when you go buy a really expensive power tool, you're like, how do I use this damn thing? Like, what does this go here? How does that go? But it's like, oh, nail to hammer. Right. Yeah. And it's like, this is actually way more sustainable and usable and helpful than that really expensive power tool, because I still don't know how to use the damn thing or turn it on or whatever it is,
Because, I mean, you could go out and get a book. Like, there's probably is a book of 1,000 NPC traits or whatever.
Right.
But using that at the table is unwieldy. Yes. Having these 3 little tables, boom, 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 done. Here's your character. Move back, get back. And that was my thought, was like, get back to the gaming. Get back to the gaming.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I know there are a lot of GMs too that tend to do a lot of planning because they're not an improv GM, which is totally fine. And they often find themselves caught on the spot when our players go way off track. And a system like this
happens?
Right. And so it can be very difficult for some GMs when we get way off track from where they planned to kind of come up with things on the spot. And this is another really great tool for those kind of GMs as well, to say, hey, we got you. It's going to happen, but you are not alone.
That's right.
You're right.
My home group calls that following the elves, because we were in some bar situation and 2 of the party just followed 2 people out the door that the GM was like, they were just leaving. There's nothing about them. They were just 2 elves walking out the door, and they went, we're following the elves. And it became like scramble, 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 scramble,
scramble. What are these elves doing? I don't know. They were just
like, I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like,
like they were just leaving. I don't know. They were going to vanish the minute they walked out the door. I don't know what they were doing.
Oh, man. Oh, that's so relatable. That's so relatable. Well, so this is really, man, this is just so very cool. Okay, chat, now's a great time to open up for questions before we move into the section where we're actually gonna roll some of this stuff up, because I think we're gonna need a hireling in our town. Like, I can
that makes sense. Every town needs one.
Every town needs at least one hireling, and in fact, we have 3 guilds, so it might be worth us rolling up 3 NPCs. Since I'm putting all this together, to go into a blog post. So we will let me pull up Roll20, because I always forget to do that, because I don't usually use it for this show. It's a very special show, or special run of this.
Here, while you do that, I will tell them about my favorite monster.
Yes, good call. I know my favorite monster looking at the list.
So and this might be the same one, and I have to admit, folks, that I did this sort of as a joke, and it became an actual something that I did that came into the book. So I am known amongst the various Kobold designers as being particularly fond of mimics. I'm not sure why.
Just wait till you run I'm going to run a mimic campaign.
Oh, please. I want to be indeed so much. So I decided, I tend to put mimics in everything I do because I think they're hysterical. So I decided, what people really need is they need a pet mimic. So I designed a CR0 pet that you can have as a mimic. It's a little jewelry box and it's on a leash. Brilliant. And I have rules for it, like how much it is and like how you have to care and feed it. And so if you've ever wanted a pet mimic, to be your very own.
It's like a purse dog, but
And I have to say that I was scrambling to try to come up with like what's the trait for this, and I was mentioning it to some of the other designers, and I forget who said it, but I definitely jumped all over it. They said that their ability, like the main trait, it should be cuteness, and that it mesmerizes people to want to hold and pet it and feed it if you fail your save. That's like its entire ability. That's its only power.
Its only power is cuteness. Yeah.
Yeah.
The power of cuteness. Wow. I'm in love with it. If it means anything, my favorite one is your other mimic. So we've covered both the mimics. The other one is just so normal. What makes I also love mimics. One of the things that, in my opinion, makes mimics great are the surprise of it. Yes, right, which is nice.
Sure.
But the ones that are just it's the everyday part. It's the normalization of what it is that is a mimic that I love. Those are the ones like somebody right now for the Oozescape was playing the Doppel Elixir, which I thought was very, very cool.
So great.
Such a great, so great. And the idea that you swallow this ooze and it eats you from the inside out is like choice dot mimic action, right? Because it's just so normal.
Yeah.
And so
I had to think for this one I had to figure out like, well, what would a mimic in a city do? I mean, you could have a regular mimic, it's a chest or a door or whatever it is. But then I thought that honestly it was a Monty Python vibe that popped into my head, and I went, well, what if it was a wagon?
Yes.
And then you could probably, a city could hire the wagon to like carry away dead things, and you just put them in the wagon and it eats it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Or just like this idea that like a mimic wagon could just accidentally roll into town.
Yeah, it just sits there.
It just sits there and waits it out just with all the other wagons, or like near a haystack. Like there are wagons all over the place.
Oh,
like, that it unlike a lot of other mimics, which would look a bit suspicious, like a chest, like walking into town.
Right.
This wagon could kind of just roll in and nobody would
notice.
Well,
especially because this one can extrude an old woman or something that looks like an old woman who's pulling the cart along.
Okay, this makes me think of please tell me you've seen the SpongeBob movie, the first one. You know when they go to the ice cream stand and it's actually
it's like the anglerfish. That's what it's sort of. That was the idea. And it's like this old woman who's selling apples, and she can even speak. She can even speak. All she says is like apples for sale.
Yeah,
probably apples for sale.
Yeah, and you get close enough and it gets you. I love
and because I'm me. The apples are also mimics. That's the children of the wagon mimic, and they just swarm out as like, so it's like a mimic with throwing a swarm of mimics at you.
I love this so much. It just or the idea that maybe like 2 baskets of apples get swapped or dropped and they end up with all the mimic apples not knowing it. Man, that's funny. That's the kind of humor. That's the dark humor I look for in my games.
But I made sure to put in there this thought of like occasionally they're civic minded. A community could strike a deal with a wagon mimic because they're not completely dumb and hire it to work for the city. Then everybody knows it's a mimic, but it just trundles along. People throw like, meat scrapped or offal or, carcasses or whatever. And that's how they dispose of it, because disposal in a city is important.
Actually, speaking of, our city has its own disposal.
See?
We this was kind of by accident, but not entirely. It's actually a organization, not a guild. Mm-hmm. Our only organization in town is the Order of the Clerics. It's an order of clerics, and they have hired a group of craftsmen to create critters that clean up all of the trash and garbage. Basically, it's the Honorable Association of Tinkerers handle the kind of the cleaning up of the city, if you would. All right, I feel like we need a hireling. Now we do have. I'll tell you what we've got going on in town.
Okay.
Because we might choose to roll up a couple for one, because we've got some shops and guilds and an organization. So like we might want to do like one shop, one guild, and the organization, or however we want to. But so for our guilds, we've got the Honorable Association of Tinkerers, the Honorable Society of Leatherworkers, the Solemn Order of the Malsters, and the Steadfast Fellowship of Masons. These are kind of the groups that are working in town. Our local shop is Key, Bugbears, and Bronze Feathers. the Hermit's Chalice and the Groggy Grig. The Hermit's Chalice is kind of a junk store. This other one's a magic store, the Bugbear, and the Groggy Grig is just what it sounds like. It's like a bed and breakfast. And then the Order of the Platinum Torch is this cleric group in town that manages this fountain, this well in the center of town that provides all the water to all the people. So this is kind of the arrangement that's going on in town. So, knowing this, I think maybe we should start. We did build our guilds first, and it's kind of the most important part of our town. So maybe we add a hireling from one of the guilds, which seems like something that could happen. So, let's see. Where do we begin? First off, I also love that. You know what it you've put a cost table in here. Like, what does it cost to like every time they want to hire a better version of something that costs
goes up just a little bit more
money. You know, I think that's also very, very, very cool. So, I kind of want to. These all seems like craftsmen, artificers, right? Because they're all mostly crafting guilds. It does look like we have brewer, winemaker. Might be the right choice there with some skills and some tools. So we could go that. We could go that route, which seems like an easy one. Yeah.
And they're sort of in the same vein. So if we went that way, then we would use the crafter stat block that's in here.
And so we would have one period, and this would also work for our leather workers too. So really, you might be able to just create like a general NPC, and depending on which guild they go to.
Right, and all you'd have to do is keep in mind which toolkit that they were better with. Like a brewer would obviously be brewing tools, and a leather worker would be a cobbler's kit or leather worker tools.
Exactly. I'll also say that the Malsters, they're an interesting guild because they are run by a silent order of monks. So you have to be like a monk so that would be actually probably a monk hireling, though it's very interesting because they would be in their service time to the Malsters, they have to be in silent servitude. So,
and we do include a monk stat block in here.
I saw that. It doesn't look like Wolfgang managed
Just don't
to make you get
don't tell Wolfgang. Don't tell Wolfgang.
So yeah, I love that. So for now, we'll actually go with this kind of general crafter stat block would be where we would start, right? So we'd go look at this general crafter stat block. But I want to know a little bit more about this person. Who is this crafter? Let's roll some tables. Yeah. Do you have a quick roll, or do you want me to do it?
Let's let you do it. You can do that quick roll on there.
All right, I got some D10s.
I have dice.
D10 number 1 is an 8. So on the first personality, they are a hidden fanatic. What they are a fanatic of, I'm not exactly sure yet, but I love that they're a hidden fanatic.
Great.
It's great. They're a hidden fanatic. Beautiful. I should add that to their personality traits. Here we go. Okay, and next up on my D10,
let's see,
please, a 2. A 2 says they are annoyingly overeager. Of course they are. They're annoyingly overeager. So this is this poor hidden fanatic that is annoyingly overeager.
And maybe they're hiding their fanaticism by being annoyingly overeager. So like you won't suspect the super, like eager guy who really wants to help you being a fanatic in some fashion.
And then last but certainly
but why?
I love
why
that.
Are they doing?
Why? Yeah, what is driving them? And I think this is where we're gonna get a little excited. A 7 says only the craft matters. But the question is, if they are in fact, I'm gonna say this is probably one of our leather workers, not the Malsters, because they would be in silent servitude. And I feel like
it's hard to be. Yeah. It's being an overeager yet also silent.
Also silent. So this is one of
a very
our leather
eager
workers.
mime.
Yeah. And they believe that only the craft matters, which seems pretty reasonable because their craft is very particular. They only make blessed leather items because they use blessed leather from these clerics in town. The clerics bless all the leather.
So secretly hates the paladin for wearing plate mail. Like, no, everybody should only be wearing leather.
Yeah. What is, and who knows, maybe they're actually a fanatic of like blacksmithing. Like they actually are. It's not leather working, right? Because the craft, only the craft matters is
could be a craft. What's craft? Yeah, what craft are they doing?
Or maybe they really want to be a malster, but they can't possibly maintain the vow of silence.
Right, or it could even be that maybe they're even like a sect within the Leatherworkers Guild. They're like, no, we want to use these leathers, like we want to use like human skin or monster skin or whatever, and it's like no, you're just too extreme. He's the extreme leather workers.
He's a hidden fanatic of upcycling.
That's right.
He's a total hidden fanatic of upcycling his leather, which means that he will make leather out of just about anything.
He wants bedazzled, he wants carved, and it's like,
and you know what?
He's the punk rocker of the leatherworking world.
He doesn't believe in letting anything go to waste that includes human flesh, which means sometimes we end up, and they're just not really into that level of the craftsmanship.
They're like, you need to calm down. We're making pants.
He doesn't believe that they should limit themselves to just blessed leather.
I'm done with your rules.
Yeah,
he says.
I'm done with your rules. All right, so I love this. I'm gonna put hireling number 1 is gonna be connected to the leather working guild. And I bet you that these paladins or these clerics that provide are not happy about his.
They're not down with his activities.
Yeah, this is definitely not an agreed upon thing. Okay, I love this so much. Let's add I did not mean to add a character sheet. I wanted to add a handout. And probably, honestly, if I were kind of prepping this, I might come through and roll a couple of these up like lickety-split. And then, like you said, pull the stat block and just have the stat block ready for them in case they get, roped into shenanigans. Okay, so we've got this, the hireling 1. Let's see what hireling number 2 is going to be. Maybe one of these are for the local shops. Now
shopkeeper that the party could run into a lot.
Now, we did say, so the Hermit's Chalice is a very interesting one because the Hermit's Chalice actually has, is run by an old hermit in town. So, that could be a very interesting, build. He's a bit of a junk collector. So if we kind of scroll our tables here, I also think I tied him back to somebody else in town. So he would be a nice little NPC to give some life to. He might be...
I would say that he's probably someone in the realm of a shopkeeper.
A shopkeep, yeah, because he's not
at this point
magical. Yeah, he's just business trade kind of.
Yeah.
So probably just a merchant, money changer, pawnbroker, peddler. Yeah.
Peddler might even be close if he's doing that, but like even a merchant can be anywhere from like a shopkeeper to he runs a shop. So
he runs a shop. Yeah. So we would probably start with just the basic merchant build for him, and honestly, again, if you leave it open enough, depending on which shop they go to, he could be, I'm sure there's like an innkeeper similar, but I imagine merchant has got to be pretty close to that.
Now, I would imagine that that he is probably a higher level type of character. He owns a shop, so maybe you consider him maybe in the either journeyman or master level. In which case, if it was like a journeyman or let's say he's a master shopkeeper, he would have a bonus of 4 to his die rolls on any of his checks involving his craft.
Oh, so, I see.
So if he was like, so if he was bargaining with like a PC over, like if they were, trying to haggle about a price of something, he would get that bonus to his roll, and that's how the skill table works in terms of like adjusting them on the fly.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's very cool. And then like maybe if they were like young or new or
they'd have no bonus, or they'd have
bonus. Okay. All right, so I quick rolled for these 1, 10, and 8.
Ooh, let's see.
So 1 is impressively arrogant. That seems about right. 10 is quotes religious text. And 8 is working for the PC's foe or rival. Ew. So I'm gonna collect all of these. These all seem pretty special. It's funny that he is basically a hermit, but he's a bit of an arrogant hermit, which is maybe why I went into hermitage.
Yeah.
See,
now I'm enough of a medievalist where I'm thinking hermit like the guys that bricked themselves into rooms, and so I'm imagining the shop is just a brick wall with this one little opening, and he sticks things through it, and it's but that's
I love that. Yeah, like he doesn't interact with anybody actually in the shop itself. He quotes religious texts. Now this doesn't say which religious text, which I find interesting, and leaving that open again could become handy, say, for whoever the foe is.
Exactly.
You mentioned that. So maybe he quotes religious text or knows something, but I love that idea that you have to get the hermit to come out of his shell.
Well, the best part about this for me would be like he's a hermit, but he's not hermiting. He's in a shop.
We actually
So
put
it's like,
that description down as like he actually like he calls himself a hermit, but he lives in town.
right. And now he like maybe he's even quoting religious texts about like this is the proper way of spiritualism is to seclude yourself from all people and from communities. And the players will be sitting there going, you're telling us this while you're in a shop that you run. To how we should all go out into the woods. Like you're not doing the thing you're saying. And the disconnect is the best part about that. Yeah. See, that's a memorable character that players will remember.
Yeah, they're
like
gonna
that crazy shopkeeper
hermit,
guy.
not hermit.
Right. They won't remember his name, but they'll call him Hermit, not Hermit.
Yeah, 1 year later, Turbo, I'm gonna DM this world. I mean, this is just a town and it already feels like a whole world. Okay, love that. So hireling number 2 is gonna be a master shopkeep. In this case, this hermit from the Hermit's Chalice. We know he's been sitting on this chalice. You might need to get the chalice. But the fact of the matter is he's got it. And he built his whole business around it. Which screams steal this from me.
Oh, yeah.
Steal this from me. So we have at least one craftsman that could go a lot of different directions. One for the local shop. And I think, honestly, the next one we should do is for this order because they are so influential to the town. So a hireling from the cleric order means it's probably going to be a cleric. But I imagine you're not going to get one of the upper clerics. Like, I like the idea that maybe
you might get like the young guy, or the young lady, the young eager, like acolyte who's like, oh, I'll help you. Yeah.
So that's actually on here, right? An acolyte is a build. So I think that would be the one that we would go with is acolyte for this.
Let's see what their personality is.
Yeah. So I'm gonna quick roll those 3 again. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Numbers say. Oh, interesting. Backwards this time. 10, 1, and 4.
She's cruelly petty.
Oh. Okay. Cruelly petty. 10, 1. Absent sleep. Oh. Absolutely picks at their scars. Which is kind of gross. This person's turning into a little bit of a kind of strange person. And 4, trying to earn forgiveness.
Oh.
Ooh. So maybe they're only still an acolyte because, they did something bad.
Yeah. Well, that's probably where the scars came from.
Yeah.
And like maybe they're picking at them. Maybe they're picking at them because it's guilt.
Oh yeah, it's like snapping a
like a rubber band.
To remind yourself like they're actually in a bit of penitence at the moment.
But I could see how somebody who's feeling that guilty and trying to earn forgiveness could almost come off as cruelly petty because they are,
especially a cleric, somebody that's trying to be a cleric. It can be very easy to like really walk that line, especially when you're trying to make up the penance for it, where you almost kind of push it too hard and are a little too rough around the edges. So
especially if they don't agree with the penance and they're like, they're making me do this.
Yes, absolutely. So
and then that's the best part because then like as soon as you come up with that sort of thought, then you have a character arc.
Yep.
Like this young cleric who got in this accident and is being forced to do this penance, and it starts off cruelly petty. Their arc could be with them realizing, I really need to repent this thing, and I really need to get forgiveness, and it's how they change, and that's how they have it again because people never stay the same.
And honestly,
even NPCs,
a hireling that is working with the group, and they find out that they're working towards forgiveness from the order. That gives your PCs a reason to really buy in trying to help this cruelly petty person, because who wants to help a cruelly petty human being? Nobody. But when you realize why they are cruelly petty,
you start feeling bad for them, and you're like, maybe we should help them.
Kicks in, and you're like, oh man, we're just gonna have to suffer through the Debbie Downer over here until we can help them, because that may be your crew's shindig, or who knows. Maybe that's not your thing, and you assure that they don't get the forgiveness, or you realize they don't get the forgiveness they deserve. So I love this so much.
And then as a GM, if they decide like, no, we're not taking that person with us, and then later they find that hireling's body in the next dungeon because the person went off and tried to do it themselves and died, then you get the moral, all the feels happen because they're like, look, you did this. This is the consequence.
And this very powerful order of clerics is probably going to go, you killed an acolyte, pay up.
Yeah. Like, this is your fault.
Yeah, this is your fault. This was an asset. We owned this.
You wanted that curse removed? Well,
no,
it's going to cost you extra now.
It's extra now, because you didn't return our acolyte. Wow, so cool. Okay, so basically what we've done is we've gone through and we've created 3 hirelings that connect in and can connect in various ways depending on the choices made by your players into this city that we have designed and developed. We're calling it Saint Costa because it is on a coastal region.
Perfect.
It is on the coast, and we've got some interesting like geography things about it. There's a set of grasslands on the other side that are under a perpetual storm, which makes travel hard, which means coastal travel is about the only way in and out of the city. So there's some really interesting things here. Most of this actually comes out of Sebastian's geography section. And we rolled for oceanside exposed fossils. So that's actually one of the things that the Masons tend to dig up are these exposed fossils. And we don't...
Those are certainly... They're never going to come to life and try to attack the town.
No, this is totally going to be fine. The clerics have it under
control. They got it. They got it dialed in.
Yeah, they've got it
Not to worry at all.
So, man, I love this. And again, this tool is one, like, we just did quick prep in, 10 minutes? 15 minutes.
Yeah.
We built 3 NPCs. Boom, boom, boom. They're enough for me to get started. I would probably find a name rolling table and add names to them so that they don't catch me on the spot because I'm really bad at names. But that might be my only next step. But this, I think, is actually a section, unlike some of the other sections in the book, which are a little bit more about GM planning. This is the section you want to have open for on the spot.
Yeah. I really did try to think of it as something that you could use really fast because these are the things that come up in the game that you're never prepared for.
Yeah, absolutely. And just feeling like it's like there. Somebody in chat made the great comment that like the 3 D10 tables would make for the perfect like GM screen addition.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're that small, they're that helpful, they're that quick for your NPC. So
actually that would be really cool to have like a GM screen for town.
For town. Like, a town which I think is
town or city screen, and then
which is like
pull that off
tables,
when you go to the dungeon or whatever.
Yeah, it's so cool. Add that to the Kickstarter. Where's
Wolfgang?
Somebody call Wolfgang. Get
him on the phone.
So we have come to the end of today. If you have joined us in chat, I want to say thank you so much. We are closing out our conversation this week on Campaign Builder Cities and Towns. I want to thank you, Brian, for coming in, for sharing your brilliant design, and getting everybody hyped about the design that you can actually get your hands on, because the Kickstarter is still running for, I'm not sure, it's for a few days more. I feel like it's like a week. Let me tell you that in actuality, so I don't lie to you live on Twitch. That seems like a bad thing. Campaign Builder, Cities and Towns, we are far past the goal, which means we are reaching stretch goals left and right. We have crossed the $150,000 mark and are working towards the 175, which will be the next big release, which I believe is also some more... critters for the streets.
More monsters and stuff.
Because you've written a bunch, but there'll be a couple more coming through. We've already unlocked the character sheet, which is really super cool. So go check it out. There's the link in chat. And if you're unsure about wanting to back at and want to know a little bit more, remember you can head on over to YouTube and catch these conversations that I've been having with the writers over the last few weeks and see each of their contributions in action as we have rolled tables, we've built stuff. You heard me kind of review all that today. So I think that's really, really cool. All right, Brian, tell everybody where they can find you when you're not over here sharing your koboldliness.
Well, you can find me on Brian Suskind on Instagram or Twitter, and I'm also on the Midgard Discord or Facebook page, regularly there answering questions about the setting and about other Kobold Press stuff. That's where you can find me. And Dot, thank you so much for having me here. This was great.
Thank you, and thanks again, Chad, for hanging with us. We'll be back, I believe, next week. Oh, I cannot forget. I have other announcements. I pulled these up beforehand.
That's right.
I pulled them up before, so I would have them ready to go and available. So first things first, if you are near and around Atlanta and headed to MobaCon, a couple of the Kobolds will be there, myself included, along with Alexander. So you can drop by.
And Sarah Madsen.
And Sarah. Oh, is Sarah there too? Okay, great. I need to hook up with Sarah. So Sarah Madsen's going to be there. I know I'm running a game, but I think my table's full. Alexander's running a game, and we've got a bunch of panels. So you can check out the MomaCon app for that. And for those of you that can't arrive in person, don't fret. You can actually, this is going to sound so ridiculous, but this is how it's going to happen. You can check me out for the DragonCon Town Hall happening live at MomaCon Thursday night over on their YouTube or their Facebook page. So if you want to get a little bit of something extra, if you can't be there in person, we'll have a live stream coming from DragonCon for MomaCon, which is pretty cool. Now, in terms of Tome of Beasts, there's a few things. Tome of Beasts Pledge Manager is now open. Go hit our website. If you missed the opportunity to back Tome of Beasts 3 on Kickstarter, now is your chance to get over to Pledge Manager and get yourself in there.
And it's going to be good.
It is going to be so good. I'm so very excited. I'm a proud dot. At the very end, I managed to get 2 beasts in the book. I was very, very proud little dot. So make sure you get your hands on that. And I want to say that it looks like we have a couple bundles available right now. So if you're wanting to expand your Kobold Press library, a few bundles going on, including a Southlands hardcover bundle. Pretty exciting. And then there's a
They look great on the shelf.
They do look great on the shelf. And then there's a Beast hardcover bundle. So if you're missing all of the other Beast books, you can grab all 3 of those, which include Creature Codex, Tome 1, and Tome of Beast 2, and then get ready for Tome of Beast 3 dropping. And if that's not enough, or you're like, look, my bookshelves are literally bending in the middle, I cannot have any more books, and you're switching over to VTTs, which we love as well, we have a massive Kobold Press bundle. It includes like 15 titles or something like that, all on sale over at Roll20, Roll20 app online, and you get 40% off if you buy the whole bundle. So basically you can like stat out your Roll20 with all the Kobold Press stuff you can shake a literal stick at, with 40% off, which is like crazy. You basically get everything for like a massive discount. So you can check those things out throughout the week. Make sure you swing back by, see how we're doing over on social media this weekend at MomoCon, and we'll be back here next week to talk a little bit more about Campaign Builder, Cities, and Towns as we begin to wrap up this Kickstarter and bring this book together to deliver it to your door.
It's going to be very exciting.
It's very exciting. So thank you again, Brian, for joining us. Thank you, Chad,
for
joining us. And we will see you all next week. Same Kobold time, same Kobold channel. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.